Hi guys, welcome to the first Adobe Premiere Pro tutorial. I'm super excited, hopefully you are too. Before we begin, I want to say that editing is a creative skill. The editor is the one that collects all the pieces that make up a video, whether it be raw footage, images, and graphics, and we organize them in a cohesive way. It's a lot like putting together a puzzle. Once you learn the basics, it becomes less about following a step-by-step guide and more about using the tools you have to reach your creative vision. So that being said, this video is going to be a step-by-step process. We're going to watch a sequence together, and after that we're going to go through the step-by-step process on how I made that sequence. And so by the end of this video, you'll know almost everything you need to know to edit most of the types of videos that we make for Wall Kids. All right, so let's get started. Here I'm at my computer home screen. I use Windows, but Premiere Pro works pretty much the exact same way on a Mac, so you'll be able to follow along. If there's something different, I'll let you know, but mostly it comes down to shortcuts, which we'll get into a little bit of that later. So we're at the home screen. First, we need to get all our footage in one place. And you don't necessarily need to have everything on your computer, and you can use an external drive and it makes things easier if you don't have enough space on your computer. First, I'm going to go to File, Explore, and that's going to be your Finder on a Mac. I'll scroll down to the drive that my footage is in. So I have it all on a flash drive right now that I haven't plugged in. And I am actually going to move it to my computer because things on my computer will move a bit faster than if I was working on a flash drive. So I'll open up another window. And then I'm just going to put it right here in Project Drive. I'm going to make a folder called Wall Kids Training. And then I'm just going to drag all of this stuff over and drop it and let it load. Okay, so now everything here is done. So we're going to close that, and then it's important to eject the flash drive before continuing. And this will make sure you don't get confused later on when you're trying to sort through footage. So we'll close that for now, and now we'll open Premiere Pro. All right, so this is Premiere Pro. This is the first page. You have a couple options here. You can start a new project. You can open the previous project. Down here, you have any recent projects you're working on. And on this page, actually, you have a bunch of different little tutorials that you can watch and read through. I'm going to go home. We're going to just open a new project. All right, so this is the page that comes up when you start a new project. And we're going to name it Wall Kids Training, but we're not going to put a space in there because we want to make sure the project file is separate from the folder as far as naming goes. So when you're looking for specifically a project file, you can find it without having to go through the folder. All right, and we're also gonna put underscore video to it. Organization is probably like half of editing. It's super important. It makes things a lot easier and a lot less frustrating. Then we're also gonna need to change the location. The location is set to the last thing you're working on. So if you press browse, it'll open up your Finder window again. For now, we'll just put it in the same folder that we have our footage in. That's Wall Kids Training. And we just select that folder. The rest of this stuff, there's a couple pages here. We don't need to worry about any of this right now. We can go into it a bit later, but for now, we have our name, we have the right location, and we can press OK. Okay, so this is what's called your workspace. And there's a bunch of different panels here, and a lot of these panels can actually be grouped together. And you can actually move these around as much as you want to set up a layout that works best for you. But for now, we're going to stick with the default editing workspace. And to make sure that you're there, you can go to Window, Workspaces, you can click Editing. And before we begin anything else, I do want to make sure that we have an autosave set up. It's good to save every few minutes, but a lot of times if you're going, you kind of don't really remember. So we're going to set up an autosave. And so to do that, we click the editing bar, we scroll down to Preferences, and then down here's Autosave. And so once we click that, we open up this, and we can set up how frequently it saves. So right now it's set up to every 15 minutes it's going to autosave. For now, we'll go ahead and switch that to 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes it'll autosave, and you can do that as many as you want. So we'll press OK. All right, so I'm going to give you a rundown of this workspace, but before we do that, we're going to bring in our footage and make a sequence. First, we're going to find the project window in the lower left-hand corner, and that's this one right here. And there's a bunch of ways that you can bring your footage in there, but the easiest way I found is to just drag and drop. So we go to our folder with our footage, and this is everything. Notice here's your project file. So we're just going to take all this, drag and drop. It'll take some time to import. Now that everything's here, we're going to make a sequence. We're going to right click, we're going to do new item, sequence. So there's a lot of stuff here. A lot of it we don't actually need to worry about, so don't let this freak you out. What we're going to do is we're going to digital SLR 1080p 24. It's already pre-selected for you. What you're doing here is picking the settings that the sequence is going to be when it's finally exported. So we want this video to be at a 1920 by 1080 pixel aspect ratio. And that's what full HD is. The 24 here means that the sequence will be at 24 frames per second, which is a standard frame rate. Remember, video is playing a bunch of still frames in quick succession to make it look like there's motion, kind of like a super advanced flip book. So 24 frames per second means that for every second of video, there are 24 individual still frames. We'll name the sequence what the video is going to be called without spaces. So if this video is going to be called Wall Kids Tutorial, you do Wall Kids Tutorial. We'll also underscore and put in draft 1. Even if this is the only draft ever, we still want to put that there because it helps. So we'll press OK. All right, so notice your sequence pops up here in the project window, and then something populates your timeline window. So this is your timeline, and all your video, all your effects, anything you do will pop up in here. Now let's take a look at this workspace. In the upper left-hand corner is your source window. And so if you double click on a file here in the project window, it'll pop up here. So I'm just going to double click on that one. And next to the source window is your program window. And this is where all the footage that's in your timeline will show up. Right now it's black because there's nothing in our timeline right now. But as we bring video in, you'll notice that stuff will start popping up here. In between your timeline window and your project window is your toolbar. And these will show a bunch of tools that will affect your timeline. And really the only two tools that you'll need to worry about right now is your selection tool, which is your normal cursor, and your razor tool, which will let you cut video together. And next to the timeline to the right is your audio levels, and this will let you monitor audio. And the last panel we'll worry about today is the effects control panel. That's grouped together with the source window. And so you just click on effects and you'll get to effects. And there's nothing here, but we'll come back to that. But for now, we'll go back to source. I do want to make sure that my project window right here is as organized as possible. It doesn't look too bad right now because I only have the exact footage and audio I'm going to be using, and there isn't even a lot of that, but this will get overwhelming very quickly, especially once we start needing to pick our own clips and we have a bunch of graphics, a bunch of text and all that. We want to make sure this is as straightforward as possible. So to do that, I'm going to make a couple bins. The first bin is going to be a video bin. The next bin is going to be an audio bin. To make a bin, I'll right click in the program window and click new bin, and I'll name it video. Okay, and I do that again and name this one audio. And then all I need to do is drag and drop the files into the corresponding bin. By default, the bins are open, so I'll make sure to close them. Now the project window is much easier to navigate. Now I'll open up the video bin and I'll click on the first clip I'm going to use, which is actually going to be the last one right here. So this is going to be our starting clip. Notice how it opens up in the source window, not the program window. You'll notice that there is a bunch of information next to that clip. There's actually a little scroll thing here that you can scroll, and a bunch of different information there. A lot of this we don't need to worry about right now, but there are two bits that we do, and that's the frame rate and aspect ratio. Starting with the frame rate, remember how we set the sequence frame rate down here to 24 frames per second? Notice how on these clips, the frame rate isn't exactly 24. It says 23.976. It's the same thing as 24 for all intents and purposes. It's just a difference between TV and the movies. But this is 24 frames per second. You don't need to worry about the decimal number. So our first two clips are 24 frames per second. But these other two are actually 60 frames per second. Again, even though it says 59.94, it is 60, so don't worry about the decimal. Shooting at 60 frames per second lets us slow it down and get nice and smooth slow motion. Whenever you want slow motion, you need to shoot at a higher frame rate than whatever you're going to export in. So since we are exporting in 24 frames per second, any slow motion clip needs to be higher than that. So in this case, 60 frames per second. if you try to slow down 24 frames per second for a video that's gonna be 24 frames per second, it's gonna look choppy. So these 60 frames per second clips, just as they are, aren't gonna be slow motion. If you notice I click one, and I play it, that's regular motion. So we need to actually slow it down to 24 frames per second. So in order to do that, we need to highlight both of them, right click, go up to modify, and click interpret footage. This opens up this window. The only box we need to worry about here is the frame rate box. We don't need to worry about anything down here. But see, we have two different options. We can use the frame rate from the file, or we can give it a new frame rate down here, which is what we're gonna do. So we can assume this frame rate, and we'll put in 24 frames per second, or in this case, 23.976. Then click OK. If you click one, go to the beginning and press play. Now it's in slow motion. Right now, I want to be able to tell which clips I changed. I want to know which ones were originally at 24 frames per second and which ones I changed to be 24 frames per second. And I want to do this because in case I need to change something or fix something, or maybe I didn't want it to make it slow motion anymore, I want to have a way to easily identify which ones I can do that for. And we do that just by labeling it a different color. For here, you notice the default color for video clips is blue. And so we can leave the 24 frames per second parts blue because that can be our default frame rate. But for the 60 frames per second ones, we can right click them, we click label, and we have a number of colors we can choose from. And it's important that once we pick a color for a type of clip, we stay with that color throughout all the videos we edit, just so it becomes muscle memory. So for me, for 60 frames per second, I like making it rose. And so now it's rose. So now that that's done, we'll double click again on the first clip we're going to use, which is this one, and I'm going to watch it the whole way through first. The four functions you'll be using right now is play, mark in, mark out, and insert. And this will let you select exactly which part of this clip you want in your timeline. And I'll be using keyboard shortcuts for these because it makes things a lot faster. So by default, clicking the spacebar will play or pause the clip, like that. Clicking I will mark in, and then clicking O will mark out, and clicking the comma will insert. Notice how it pops up here in the timeline. It's really small, but it's right there. You can hover the mouse over any of these function buttons and it'll let you know what the function does and the keyboard shortcut for it. And these are the same for Mac as well. Starting from the beginning of the clip, I'm going to play and mark my in and out points, and then I'll insert. So that's pretty good right there. We can actually go, using this, go to in. We can go to our in point and press play, just so we can watch the stuff between the in and out point. And that looks good right now. Notice that I was moving the shift bar. I can click on the edges of the bar and move it back and forth to give me as wide or as small a view as I want. This works. So we're going to press our comma and insert. Now I'm going to do that for all the other clips. So now that we have the stuff in our timeline, we can zoom in with this bottom scroll bar on the timeline. We can zoom all the way in. We might need to move it back a little bit. And this is called our playhead over here, so I'll move that to the very beginning. You'll notice something here. So I'm gonna click this video in the project window. And it's easy to find that. I can actually right click on this clip and I can click reveal in project, and it'll jump me to that clip in whatever bin it's in. So I'm going to double click this. I'm going to go back to my in point. In our project window over here, the video looks really cropped in compared to the source window. And this is where our aspect ratio comes into play. So in the project window over here, it's listed under video info, which is down here. Remember, we set our sequence to be 1920 by 1080p or full HD. The problem is our clips were shot in a higher aspect ratio, which is 3840 by 2160. Now this is actually a type of 4K. And 4K is bigger than full HD, so when you put the 4K footage in an HD timeline, it looks cropped in. To get things to look the same, we're going to need to adjust the clips in the timeline. We're doing it in the timeline because we aren't changing the clip itself. The clip is always going to be in a 4K resolution, but we can crop out so that we can see the whole frame. So in order to do that, we need to go back to the effects controls panel that I was telling you about, and notice how it's still empty. We need to select a clip first, and then it'll populate the window. So I'm just going to select this first clip. So right now, all we're going to do is adjust the scale of this clip. Right now, you'll notice it's at 100%. But if we click this setting open, we have a little scroll bar that we can adjust the scale up or down. 4K, this type of 4K, is double the size of Full HD. So if we drop this down to 50%, we should get the full picture. So we'll drop it down to 50. If I actually click on this number, I can type in the exact number to get an exact result. So we're at 50. Now if I go click on the source panel again, you'll notice now they match. You also notice down here in the timeline, the FX window is now highlighted yellow. That lets you know that has been altered in some way. Now what we need to do is we need to copy paste this effect to the other 3 clips because they're all the same 4K. So what we're going to do is copy with Control or Command C. Remember, it's Command C on a Mac. For me, it's Control C though. Control C. And now we're going to highlight the rest of the video clips. And then we can right click on all of them. We go over here to Paste Attributes. And this will open up a box that lets you pick exactly what effects you want to put on these clips. And this is really useful again when we have a bunch of different effects. If you wanted to change the color of some of them, or if you're working with a green screen, this is really useful. But for now, we're just copying the scale, and the scale is considered motion. So we can just check the motion and we press OK. Now, if you were playing this, there was a chance that it might have been laggy on your end. And this is because while it's playing in real time, that might be too much of a strain on your computer. In the project window, there's something called playback resolution. And we can change this without actually changing the final product at all. So I'm actually going to change this to a quarter. So what this will do is when it plays back, it'll play back at a quarter quality of the video. So if I do that again, you'll notice it's a bit soft. This isn't what the actual video is going to look like, but it just makes it easier to check your work. Now, while watching this timeline, I noticed that some of these clips lapse a little bit too long, so I'm going to trim them a bit. And this is where our razor tool comes in. It actually also has a keyboard shortcut, just the letter C. So if I'm on selection, I can click C, boom, I'm on my razor. Then I can move this playhead to wherever I want to cut. So we'll go again. We'll see what feels good. All right, so I feel like this one should be trimmed down a bit. So maybe around here feels right. Now, I can just cut the video or I can just cut the audio. I can also do both at the same time. And I just need to hold Shift and then click on the playhead. And now it cuts both at the same time. Now I'll go back to my selection tool, and the keyboard shortcut for that is the letter V. And I will highlight the stuff I want to cut out, and I just backspace it away. And I can actually click on this empty space and delete that too, just with the backspace. Now I'm going to go through and keep adjusting until it looks good. Now if you do run into any mistakes, you can just use Command Z or Control Z to undo. I'm going to shorten this a little bit some more. And actually what I could do now is I can highlight both clips. And if I go to the beginning of that clip, notice how it looks like there's this arrow with a bar. If I press and hold with the left click, I can actually move it all back and forth like this. Now we're going to look at audio. So we'll close the video bin, open up the audio bin. Here's our audio. If you click on this audio track, this is what pops up. And you can get a sense of where the song is going. You can see there's some build up here. There's some sort of beat change here. Then some back and forth, and then it gets louder, back and forth, louder again, then it very quickly fades out at the end. I'll listen to it for a bit until I find which part I want, and as I play it, you'll notice the audio meters next to the timeline. We actually want both of these things to be equal, so we're going to pause the audio track right now, or we're going to do what's called equalizing the audio. We're going to take this track, we're going to right click it, up to modify, audio channels. Here is our tracks. We have a left and right side of the clip. So we're going to align the right with the left side. And so when I press OK, you'll notice that this right here, which is the right side of the track, is going to change a little bit. So it equals the left. And I press OK. So now if we go back and start playing the audio, now it's the same. So listening to this song, I'm actually going to skip to the end, but I actually really like how this ended. It kind of ends in a very, very sudden drop, which is good because it kind of matches the very end of this video where I pick up the shoes. And I actually think I might actually want to end with this in-camera audio. So that'll work pretty nicely together because this video will drop off super quick and come in and let the camera audio do the rest. For the audio, we can do the same thing as before. We can use our in and out points. Here's the thing. If I were to press my comma to insert, here's what happens. It splits the rest of my videos in half. And what happens is, first of all, my playhead is in the middle of the clip. So whatever you insert will go to where the playhead is. So if the playhead is in the middle of the clip and I press insert, that's what happens. If I go to the beginning of the footage, because I'm thinking, oh, I want the audio to start at the beginning, I still won't do that because it'll just push the rest of the video away. So I'll Control Z that again. So in order to fix that, I can actually just drag my selection into the timeline. I can click on this drag audio only, press and hold, then drag it. And there we go. I want this ending to be at the end, so I'm probably going to have to scoot it over. And again, see what I did there. I went to the edge of the clip where the little arrow and bar is, and I'm dragging it over. And then I can just move it over again. So I'm going to want this drop off at the very end to happen when this clip starts. And the drop off happens at around this point of the song, right around there. Notice how I double click the selection and then only that selection pops up here in the source window. So if drop off happens like around this area, I want to move that over to the end. There's actually something you can do using the letter M. You actually set a marker. So with the clip selected, with my playhead selected to where I want to mark, press M, and you got this little green marker here. Now that the marker is there, I can actually drag the whole audio clip over to where I want it to be. I want it to be there. And because of this, I'll have to drag this out so it reaches the beginning. And now I'm going to just double check, make sure that sounds good. Nice. So it sounds pretty good so far, but the song is really loud, so I'm going to adjust the gain so it's quieter. And then I'm also going to get rid of these natural audio bits that I'm not going to use. Press and hold Shift. I'll select all the clips I want gone. And I could delete them, but I don't want to do that in case for whatever reason I want to go back and I need them again. So I'm just going to actually disable them. So to do that, I just press Shift E and they're disabled. So now if I were to play it, anything that's kind of blacked out like this won't actually play. I can do that for video too. I can do Shift E, disable, and it's gone. Shift E again, and it's back. Now that that's done, I do need to adjust this song's gain. I'll right click, go to audio gain. Down here at peak amplitude, this shows how loud this particular audio bit gets. And then here we can adjust gain by however many much. And this is a bit of trial and error. You kind of have to guess until it sounds right. So I'm going to do that. I want this song to be in the background, but I don't want it too quiet. So -12 actually sounds pretty good, I think. So I'll leave it there. But I also want to make this natural audio at the end a bit louder, just so it stands out a bit. So I'm going to, again, right click, audio gain. So for the natural audio, I found adjusting it by 15 works pretty well. All right, so we're getting close. So first, we need to add some transitions to this because it kind of just, especially the video, it kind of just begins and ends very abruptly. And the audio in the beginning kind of just starts because we're starting in like the middle of the song. See? So we want to add in a fade in. So to do that, we can actually click Shift D to get the default transition. So if you left click at the beginning of the video and press Shift D, you get your cross dissolve. And that is the default transition for Premiere Pro. So I click, you get a little cross dissolve. I can do the same thing with the audio, and it's constant power. It's the default audio transition. So I play those together, and it works. So now we'll go back to the end now, and we'll do the same thing. We'll see how it sounds. I am actually going to shorten this audio a little bit because it does end a little too long after the video ends. So again, I'm just going to grab the edge of the video, press and hold, and then drag it to where I want it to be. We'll say there, and then we can play that again, see how it is. That's good, but now that needs a transition as well, so Shift D. All right, that works. Now, if you ever wanted to set these transitions to specific times, you can actually just double click each one, and up here you can set how long the transition is going to last. It goes by frames and seconds. So let's say I actually want this to last for 10 frames. I just click 10, press OK, and I'll go for 10 frames. But I'm actually going to undo that because I do like the long transition. The last thing is that we actually need a transition for the natural audio, because you notice it kind of just starts. And right now, because the song is still kind of loud at this point, it's not noticeable, but it's still good practice to put a transition there anyway. So we'll Shift D, and this one I actually do want it pretty short, because again, it's just transitioning audio. So we're going to double click that, and we're going to set that at 4 frames. All right, so now I'm going to play this from the very beginning just to see how it looks. That's good. The one thing I actually did forget though is I want to equalize this natural audio. So I'm going to right click, audio channels, do the same thing, align it with the left side, press OK. So before we do our final export, we have to do 2 more things. We need to add in a frame or 2 of black screen, and we need to select which part of the timeline we want exported. So we just need some black video. So to do that, we actually can go into the project window, we can right click, new item, we can click black video. And these settings, you can set them to whatever you want. The default settings for a black video is whatever settings our sequence is set to. Since we want this video to fill the whole screen, we want the default settings. So we'll press OK. And again, we can just drag and drop. And because we actually do have a bit of audio trail off, so audio that lasts longer than the video does, we can actually make the black video end with audio. So I'll drag it over like that, and we're good to go. And to select which part of this timeline we want to export, we do the same thing as we did with each individual clip. We mark our in or out point, and then we can export. Because we want this whole thing to export, we just go to the end of the video and press O to set a mark point. And because we set the O, it automatically marks in at the very beginning of the video. So we're good there. Now to export this video, we need to click into our project window. We need to right click the sequence, and down here is export media. So we click that. And so it's going to open up this window. Again, it has a bunch of different options. We could change the format if we wanted. There's a bunch of different formats here. H.264 is the one we use pretty much all the time, so we're just going to stick with that. You can also change the preset. So this might actually change a little bit depending on the video, but for now we're just going to leave it at the default, which is a high bit rate, and this will mean we'll get the best quality video, but not too big of a file. You can also change the output name if you wanted. We are going to click on that just to make sure it goes to the right spot. It's defaulted to the last video you exported. The last video I exported was a bunch of stuff for kids camp out, but we don't want this to go there. We want this to go with our project file. So we'll just need to go to the right spot and we'll click save. So now that that will export in the right spot, we can scroll down here. Again, most of this we don't need to worry about right now. Down here, you can see how big your file is going to be. So it says it's going to be 25 megabytes about. Now that that's all good, we can click Q. And this is going to open up a new program called Media Encoder. And so Media Encoder is how you export all your videos. So that'll open up, it'll load in the sequence up there. If you needed to, here on this screen, you can change the export and location settings one more time, but we don't need to do that. So we're just gonna press play. Depending on your computer and how long the video is, this step might take a long while because exporting video takes a lot of power. So I recommend that once you get to this step, you close all other programs so the export happens as fast as possible. This can be a good time to take a break from staring at a screen. You might notice your eyes getting pretty tired after editing for an extended period of time. It finishes exporting. We can actually go to our file, and here we have our final video over there. We can click it and we can watch it full screen. And there you go. And now I can just X out of this, get out of that. And now I'm just going to Control S to save the file, the project file, in case I ever need to go back to that. And then I can exit, because now I'm done. And that's it. We've reached the end of our basic Premiere Pro tutorial. With this information, you can edit pretty much any WellKids video we throw at you. And now it's about using the skills you learned in this video to become more creative and more efficient with the program. But for now, congratulations, because you are now an editor. See you guys later.